Welcome to CEC online lecture. Students, in today's session, we would talk about the analysis of sales volume as well as the market cost analysis. We would also discuss as to how these two types of analysis are useful for an enterprise as well as for the sales department in specific. Now, an analysis of sales volume, students, can be simply understood as a careful study of the sales figures in the company's records. You may also be interested in coming out with a detail of the volume generated in terms of sales across the product lines, by different territories, by different key accounts, or even with respect to different classes of customers. Now, this kind of analysis, students, is beneficial for the enterprise majorly for the prime reason that an enterprise is always interested to know whether or not it is having a reasonable volume of sales being generated over a period of time. Now, what can be the possible basis for analyzing the sales volume? The first and the foremost is logically to consider the total sales volume. So, this is where an enterprise would reasonably begin with. It would try to analyze the sales in terms of the total volume. That is the combined sales of all the products in all the territories for all the customers. This we also know is the figure which is very easily and readily available and is therefore going to provide you with an overall picture of how the company is doing. In addition to this, the trend in sales is obviously something that the company or the administrator and the executives, they are very interested in knowing. So they are generally interested in two kinds of trends. One, what has been the trend of the company's sales over a period of time, and second, the trend of the company's share of the total market. Now, students, we also need to take into account how well the sales are flaring across the territory or with respect to the territorial divisions. So, an analysis of the sales volume can be done very easily and also inexpensively by the territories. However, its value to the management is ordinarily limited because it tells you very little about the details of the firm's progress as a whole. But at the same time, a close analysis of the sales volume by the territories definitely is going to give a understanding to the executive in terms of making him finding out which territories are weak, which territories are strong, as well as the reasons why they are showing a certain sort of performance in terms of their sales being generated. Now, how can one understand or how can one actually compute or analyze the sales by the territory? So, students, what a sales executive or what an administrator would be doing in this case? First of all, they would be selecting a market index which is going to indicate as to what is the percentage of the total sales that should be obtained from each sales territory. In a way, this then becomes the territory index. Now, after doing this, one has to determine the company's actual total sales either in terms of volume or in terms of units during the period that you want to investigate or you want to study. Then you multiply your territorial index by the total sales figures to determine the goal in each territory or in each region. And then you compare lastly the actual regional sales with the regional goals that you have set, so as to determine if there is any variation. Now, as I stated earlier, students, also doing this kind of an exercise is going to help the executives in having a clear cut idea as to how different territories are performing. And one can then also analyze as to which territories are weak and which territories are strong, and therefore can devote more focused attention towards the territories which are performing relatively in weak manner. The third kind of sales analysis, or the basis of the sales analysis, students, can be to analyze the sales by the product. Now, we know that there are several types of volume analysis that can take place depending on how many product lines a company is dealing with or the management is dealing with. What you can do is you can simply come up with a summary of the present and the past sales figures, which can be divided into individual products or even perhaps the group of products, and then devote a closer understanding to this. Now, if your industry figures are available for each of the distinct product lines, they can serve as a yardstick against which the company can measure its own sales performance by the products or by the different product lines. A further refinement or a further detailing of the volume analysis by products can be also done, in which the executives may study the sales of each of the product lines in each of the territories. So what you are doing, you are fusing together the sales by products as well as the sales by territory. So in this way, the management would get to know as to which geographical market areas which particular product is strong or weak in terms of generating sales, right? Now, students, let us understand the fourth major basis of analyzing the sales, which is by the customer classification. Now, what is going to happen? A company is going to look at its volume of sales being generated by customer groups, and this can be done through various ways. One, you may classify your accounts on an industry basis. Second, you may classify your accounts on the basis of the key channels of distribution. You may go for a different kind of an analysis where any of these classifications of the customers, they can further be analyzed for each of the territories and for each of the lines of products that you are dealing in. So in one company, it may so happen that the sales to the wholesalers or the sales to the retailers are satisfactory on an overall basis. However, when you study it in relation to the territory, you may get different kind of a learning that probably that particular product is doing not so well in a particular territory, and therefore such a kind of detailed analysis by different lines of products or across different customers or across different kinds of regions can provide the management with detailed and very useful information, on the basis of which the future decisions with respect to the continuance of that particular product or continuance with that particular territory or continuance with that particular customer can be taken into consideration. Now, students, having discussed about the sales volume analysis, now let us focus our attention to the market cost analysis. So let us understand what do we mean by market cost analysis. So students, this is an analysis which continues in fact from the analysis of sales. It is a study which is made with respect to or regarding the marketing expenses in order to determine what is the profitability of various market segments in an organization. Now, just like we have done it for the sales volume analysis, we can also study the market cost in, it can be analyzed in three different ways, or an analysis can be categorized under three heads. The first is where the company cost may be analyzed as they appear in the ledger accounts and probably on the income and the expenditure statement. The second could be where you are grouping the various kinds of marketing cost into different kind of categories, the functional categories or probably the activity categories. And then in the third case, students, you may also be interested in analyzing the market cost after they have been allocated to territories or to products or to other marketing units. Now, students, let us come to a very important discussion here. That is, what are the findings from undertaking the cost analysis, and why do you actually go for this kind of an analysis? Now, we know that after having figured out what has been the situation in terms of the marketing cost of different segments, if we take the combined findings from both the sales volume as well as the marketing cost, this is going to help the management in taking certain key decisions. Now, these decisions can be broadly undertaken in under different heads. The first that I am going to talk about here is territorial decisions. Now, students, once the management has completed its volume analysis and its cost analysis, the executives may then decide to adjust their territories to match their current potential. Possibly the territories or the regions are very small. They're too small, and therefore the potential volume probably may not be adequate to support the expense of covering that particular territory. Or on the other hand, it can be very large, so that the salesperson may be spending too much of his or her time or too much of expenses in traveling. Now, management may also take into account a change in the selling method or the change in the channels in an unprofitable area, possibly through the mail or the telephonic survey method or the selling method. It can then be suggested instead of incurring the expenses of making the personal visits. A weak territory, you would understand, students, that it can be made profitable if you increase certain spend in that particular territory, or make certain better promotional efforts or advertising efforts. So, it is not that your weak territory is something that is a complete loss or that cannot be revived. It can definitely be revived, but obviously your volume information along with your marketing cost information is going to provide you good supporting data on the basis of which you can make different kind of decisions in that regard. As a last resort, probably it may also be necessary for an enterprise to completely abandon a area or a territory, not even use the mail facility or the telephone facility. However, when you drop a territory from your market, a company has to take into consideration not only the cost repercussions but certain other implications. Presumably, we can say that the territory may be carrying some sort of uh, share of the other indirect expenses, such as the administrative costs or the general marketing expenses, and if that particular territory is abundant, then these expenses have to be met or they have to be borne by the remaining area. So a complete understanding of everything would then help the executives and the management to take wise decisions in this regard. The second decisions, students, which is very helpful and can be undertaken by properly analyzing your sales volume analysis and your market cost analysis are the decisions with respect to the products. Now, when a cost analysis by product show significant difference in the profitability of each of the products or each of the product lines, then the executive normally have to take into account the reasons for those differences. It may so happen that the profit variation can take place or they are arising as a result of certain set of factors, like probably your order size or your packaging, that are, you know, taken in an enterprise in a certain manner. So they provide management with very little opportunity to improvise on certain things and to improve on their level of profitability. On the other hand, there could be certain low profit items which can then provide an opportunity to the administration to take certain actions and improve the situation. So a firm probably maybe, for example, be in a position to simplify its line by eliminating some of the colors or some of the products or some of the versions or the models, uh, and uh, reduce its cost, the storage cost or the inventory cost. And so by introducing certain kind of simplification in your product line, probably you can have a chance to improve your profitability or at least improve the sales of the remaining products. In this regard, students, it is also important for us to understand that sometimes the profitability of a product can also be improved by redesigning or repackaging the item. You can come up with packaging in multiple units or a single unit, or packaging according to the order size can be chosen. Another possibility also exists where you can alter the, you know, various kind of uh, other cost by managing them, um, or by relating them with the product. For example, what kind of advertising expenditure you would be taking, and that advertising expenditure can be apportioned or it can be spread for different products. This will not only help the management in reducing the uh, cost, or you know, for especially those items which are showing a discouraging level of sales, and at the same time would also help them in increasing the sales on their profitable products or on their profitable uh, uh, product lines. Now, just like I had mentioned it for territories, a low volume item doesn't mean that it is always good to drop it from the line, nor it does mean that the company can always drop an item even though it is showing some sort of a loss. A product may be necessary to round out a line, to even out a line, or the customer probably expect the seller to logically carry that particular product. So even if your figures or your volume analysis or your cost analysis show that this should be dropped, you might as well still continue with it depending on the whole situation or depending on the larger factors. Now, students, let me come down to the classes of customers. How the classes of customers and the size of the order, they are the vital decisions which again are based on your volume analysis and your market cost analysis. Now here, students, I would like to mention that typically the cost study is based on some classification of customers. They may be grouped, as I stated, by the channels of distribution, by by the, say, wholesalers or the large retailers or the manufacturers. You can go for the industry groupings of the customers also. You can classify them on, like, in one way or the other. What is the gist that we are trying to assess here? We are trying to first of all analyze if there exists the small order problem. Now, what is a small order problem? Management has to take into consideration the cost analysis by the order size. A common situation that is often encountered by the companies is the problem of obtaining small orders. That is, a significant percentage of sales is so small that they start producing or they start resulting in a loss to the company. A cost analysis, when you do it by the customer groups, this is closely related to the analysis by the order size. Frequently, we find that a customer class that generates a below average profit or a below average, contribution generally is also a small order problem. Similarly, or further, we can add that a large volume purchases, sometimes they built up their volume by providing the seller with many small individual orders. So management is then required to review both the customers as well as the order size before they take any sort of policy decisions in these matters. One more thing, students, that one needs to add here: accounts that are small order accounts, they are then require some sort of a careful consideration. It might seem that customers who are sold at a loss should be eliminated, or those who are providing you very small orders below the break even point, they should not be accepted. But there could be certain other situations which have to be taken into account, and this kind of a hasty conclusion should not be reached at. That this kind of a scenario may occur because of several reasons. Like, for example, an account may buy a large amount in a total in totality over a period of year, but it buys the products from several different suppliers. So for one supplier, he may be providing a very small order, but if you look at the totality of the situation, he is giving you a fairly large amount of order. So there could be different situations which could result into this kind of an order size. So just hastily taking that kind of a decision to eliminate it may not be a wise one, and a complete holistic assessment of the situation may have to be taken before you take or make any policy decision in that regard. Now, there could also be certain practical suggestions that you can take, that you can adopt in order to improve your average order size. Like, for example, you can educate the customer who is buying, as I said, from several suppliers. So the seller should point out to this account the obvious advantages of placing an order with one supplier only. Then for the customers who purchase a large total quantity but does it with small orders that are being placed on a frequent basis, management again face a task where they can educate the salespeople and tell them to point out the advantages of ordering once a month instead of ordering once a week. So these salespeople, they should be educated and they should be trained so that they can pass on this vital piece of information and state out the advantages of placing a certain order size to their set of potential customers. The seller may also have to sometimes provide education to its sales force along with the customers, change the compensation plan so that they stop accepting the small orders. They can also reach out to the customers through telephone, through direct mail, through other ways, so that they can improve the order size, which would then be based on the orders being procured through the personal visits of the salespeople, as well as through the phones also, through the direct mails also, and so on and so forth. So in a way, there can still be certain possibilities through which the company can improve the order size rather than taking a very strong decision to eliminate these kind of orders from the book. So students, now after understanding the market cost analysis and after understanding the sales volume analysis, we find that doing these kind of analysis can really be very helpful for the enterprise, as the enterprise or the management may have to take certain decisions regarding the territories or the customers or the orders. They can be taken into account logically and rationally only when you have a complete data with respect to the volume being generated across the territory or by the certain categories of customers or by the certain kind of territories or in certain kind of regions. Only then you can make this assessment. Similarly, when you are making an analysis of the market cost, this is going to really help you, like especially when you are doing it across the territories. It is giving you additional information whereby the management can determine the gross margin for each different region. This marketing cost analysis can also help you, where the management can list out all the activity expenses as well as their component parts. You can also figure out, like for example, you can have the personal selling activities, and you can then come up with the details of the marketing expenses in terms of what are the sales force salaries that you are paying, what kind of a travel expenses are being undertaken for different kind of activities across different territories, across different product lines, what are the office supplies which are being bought, and what is the expenditure related to those office expenses, office supplies across the territories, across the products. You can then also allocate each activity cost across the territory so as to gain deeper insight as to where you are spending, how much you are spending, and this is going to fine tune your entire information set or the data set. This will also tell you what is basically the contribution margin that you are getting from different regions, from different products, from different customers, so that a management at the end of the day can take realistic decisions, whether they want to continue with a certain kind of territories, whether they would like to continue with a certain kind of customers, whether they would like to continue with certain kind of products or certain product lines in their overall portfolio. So students, I hope that at the end of this session you would have gained understanding of how the sales volume or the marketing uh, cost analysis is done, and how this is very useful for management for undertaking certain key decisions related to their territories, product or product lines, and their customers. Thank you so much for attending this session, students. Till we come up with some more topics in the area of personal selling, just give a quick recap of the topics that we have dealt with so far. Thank you so much. Take good care of yourself. Stay safe and stay protected.